And to start, we're going to start sitting actually. So you'll take one block, and I'm going to show you this from the side just so you can kind of see what's behind me when I'm actually facing the camera. You're going to have your blanket or towel, and then you're going to put your block, just one side of your block on the blanket, so that you create a little bit of a slant, this little kind of slope, which will allow your pelvis to be neutral when you're sitting upright. So however you want to cross your legs, whatever way makes a little bit more sense and is a little bit more friendly, you want to be able to have your sitting bones be pushed forward by the slant of the block, so it creates a nice neutral pelvis or a nice neutral lower back by slightly anteriorly tilting the pelvis. So that's the setup for the sit-up. So now we'll do the sitting beginning of the practice. So cross your legs in whatever way feels the most conducive to your level of comfort. And I kind of do this, I never say anything about it, but when you first sit, even if you're not sitting this kind of cross-legged, by the way, another option is you can sit in what's called swastikasana, which is just basic leg cross, where you have the feet in line underneath the opposite knees. Or you can even sit in more traditional hero, just like this. All right? Whatever the point is, whatever the situation and the posture is, it's imperative that you have your knees below the hips. And that's kind of the point that I want to drive home the most, that you have your knees below the hips. Now, when you sit and you first get your butt planted on the block, you want to lift one side of your pelvis up and you kind of grab the flesh of your glute there and you roll that out of the way, which will help you expose the sitting bone. So you get even better contact. So you do that from side to side. And then once you feel stable, then place your hands on your lap. Make sure that your hands are not so far forward on the knees that it pulls you forward, or so far back on the thighs that it pushes you over the other way. And then give yourself a minute to get acquainted with just the periphery of this experience, of this posture. Take your time to close your eyes and just check in and feel. When I say take your time to get acquainted with the periphery of this experience, I'm mainly talking about the body. I'm talking about the traditional five senses, the external senses, which, as we know, are the touching, smelling, seeing, hearing, and tasting. And of course, at this point, there isn't really much to taste, so you can actually get a little bit better acquaintanceship with the four remaining senses. So when you sit, first of all, how equally planted do your sitting bones feel from side to side? And sometimes you can't really tell until you look a little bit harder. And when I say that, when I say notice your seat, the way you're planting your body on the block, notice that a little bit more precisely. As I say that, there's something that you, as the receiver of those words, there's something different that you do that you probably didn't do when I say, well, just feel your sitting bones on the block. And this request of seeing it more precisely or more deeply usually forces us to react differently. So there's a move that we make to get a really good, careful look. And this is one of the best lessons of this practice, of just yoga as a whole in general. Is that it'll come eventually with enough practice that nobody's going to have to tell us to look into something or perceive something even more precisely. That will be the standard mode of operation of our behavior. And our behavior, I would say, not just on the yoga mat, but any practice, anytime, any context. And this ability to be so exacting and precise about everything that we do is what defines yoga. It is to say, to be more conscious. What does it mean to be more conscious of our current, even conscious state? And this is an invitation into yourself. This is an invitation into your own complexity. Complexity that very few of us take the trouble to discover. And for all intents and purposes, this is a posture of meditation. And to really set the tone for the rest of our class, the same precise noticing that you apply to your sitting bones, apply that noticing to your eyes. And not the eyelids, but really the eyeballs. Notice where they're pointing. And you can even designate a direction. You can even direct your eyes vertically up to the top of the eye sockets as far as you can. Or you can direct your eyes down, all still while keeping your eyes closed. And so when you find how that feels, I'll encourage you to point your eyes more downward. It's as if you're looking at the tip of your nose through closed eyelids. And this is a posture, this is an experience. This is a version of yourself that as students we attempt to carry through with us through every single posture that we do. And I'll remind us about doing this throughout the class, about redirecting your visual point, your visual gaze. Because your eye position, literally and figuratively, is one of the pillars of our perspective. It's how we see, both visually and how we see as a synonym of attention, the way that we apply attention. And what oftentimes happens in meditation is we train the eyes to become more steady, less distractible, less flappable. And because the eyes are essentially just the extensions of your brain, by association, this begins to train your mental habits, effectively your brain habits, cortical habits. And as we're going to start to come out of this posture, I want to ask you to open your eyes slowly enough so that you allow the light from your environment to filter in very gradually. And notice as that light filters in, how well you can remain in that place of being embodied that you had when your eyes were closed. So as the eyes open, you start to see the environment around you. Try to remain internalized, interiorized. Okay. And then once your eyes do get all the way open, you can come forward, take the block out from underneath you, and let's actually lay down to get some work done on the hips. So you can place your blanket or towel at the head of the mat if you want something soft to support your head on, or if you just need a little bit of lift, period. And then you're going to grab your strap, and we're just going to move through the first several postures of the hip series, which are the 6 traditional movements of the hip joint. So you're going to take your strap, either open it up to a big loop, or you can just pull the loop into a small little loop and just have one long strand. So it doesn't really matter which one, as long as you're still using a belt. And if you don't have a yoga strap, a regular clothing belt works fine. I would encourage doing a loop, because then the loop gives you this ability to have handles. So you get the loop around the heel. Make sure that your heel is, the very center of your heel is pinpointed on the belt. And then just keep your knee straight. So if that means you need to bring your leg down a little bit, as we've done this many times before, you want to make sure that the straightness of the knee is never sacrificed just to get the leg vertical. So however far down your leg is, it should always be straight, right? And that will allow you to develop the flexibility of your hamstrings in a safe manner. And it doesn't really place this target of having to get the leg vertical in order to get some good results from our practice. So wherever your leg is at its straightest, engage your right quadricep, press your left leg down, and then close your eyes. And try to move right back into that sense of yourself, that embodied self that you had when we were sitting just a minute ago. And now, even though you have a little bit more to attend to, specifically your right quadricep, is there any good reason that can pull you out of the place of being interiorized that we had in our beginning meditation? And so as we try to reframe every posture and every bit of movement in yoga in these terms of perceiving it and exacting it from inside of us, from the experiential place of what it's like to feel your leg in this position without reacting to it emotionally. And it's so subtle, it's so sneaky, and it's so, one of my teachers talked about it, said it's so sticky that when we get into a posture, the raw sensation of a posture which a lot of times isn't comfortable, even though it is healthy, that feeling is coupled to an emotional reaction. So as soon as we feel the tension of a tight hamstring in doing this, what follows immediately after, right on that observation's heels, is this idea of whether I like it or I don't like it, right? And that happens right away. So, ooh, that sensation, it's either a thumbs up or a thumbs down. So what we want to be able to separate ourselves from is that approving or disapproving part of our mind, and just try to interpret the data of this muscle doing this limb doing that, in its very pure and raw form, without really even having an opinion about it. So that our practice doesn't become personal as some kind of a status symbol or as an accomplishment that we want to walk around and be proud of. But our practice is just simply about how connected we are to ourselves, how intimate we are with our own body and with all the feelings that come from it. Okay, let's switch sides. That was a little bit longer than probably needed to be in, but it's fine. We get the more time in certain postures, the more familiar we become with the characteristics of that posture. So now when you put your belt around the left heel, and again, I know that I'm a little bit of a stickler about this, but just make sure that your belt is around the heel every time. So if I turn this towards the camera, it should look like this, right? Pull with the arms, pull on your belt in a way that doesn't only pull your leg towards the head, but in a way that pulls your leg straight down into the mat. So you should feel a little increase of pressure on the back of your left glute when you're pulling on the belt right now. Keep the toes on the left foot spread, kick out through the heel. Let's just take 5 more breaths. So in closing your eyes right now, relax your jaw, relax your throat. See if you can activate your quadricep a little bit more. And if you're not quite at that state of about a level 7 of tension on a scale of 1 to 10, then make sure that you get yourself into that level 7. So then this starts to test your awareness of the sensations. Because if you back up to where it's too easy, it's easy not to get emotionally involved, and so you never really train your mindfulness. But then, of course, if you go too far and it becomes painful, then that's not advisable either. We don't want to disconnect ourselves from any damage that might be accruing in the body. So as you engage your quadricep and you feel the lengthening, the stretching, maybe not so comfortable sensations of your hamstring, what has that done to the softness and the texture of your throat? What has that done to the texture of your jaw? And this is the incredible thing about the body, is that we don't have to even emotionally track how each posture feels necessarily. We can just track what our face is doing. And if we can have the right kind of muscular output in our face, this strongly influences our emotional output. One more breath. Good. And then bend the knee. Let's switch to the first side again. Same place. Make sure the belt is right around the center of the heel. Get a good grip with the hands, but then you're going to pass off both sides of the strap to your left hand only. Okay? Your right hand is going to stay on the mat today. Your left leg is going to be pushing down the whole time. And what you're going to do is use your left arm to just tilt your right leg to the left until your right foot is in line with the left side of the body. And that's really it. So we're not going into a twist. If you pull your leg to the left so far that your right glute comes off the mat, bring it back up. So whether your foot is above the hip, above the left chest, or above the left shoulder, That's all going to be depending on how flexible your leg and hip muscles are, but we don't need them to be exceptionally flexible to feel the precise results of doing accurate work, accurate postures. Having your foot and your leg now be aligned on the slant, what you've done is you've adducted your leg, which means that now you're stretching more of the lateral hip muscles called the abductors, abductors. But not only this, we want to start to affect the joint capsule of our hip. So when you're holding your leg with the belt, just like you did before, pull down with your arm so that your whole leg begins to press down into the mat where you can feel the pressure at the back of your right hip, at the back of your right glute, or just at the right glute. Let's take one more breath like this. Good. Bring your leg back to center. And I would say pass your belt off to the left foot by lifting your left leg up first and then passing the belt over. So right leg straight on the mat, left leg extended. Pass the belts, both sides of the belt to the right hand. And keeping your knee straight, keeping the right leg heavy, sturdy and active. Tilt your left leg to the right until your foot is in line, again, with the opposite hip, chest, or shoulder, as long as pulling your leg up and over to the side has not detached your left butt from the ground. And when you get it in your final position, making sure you're not going past that level 7 of intensity, right? You're going to pull back on the belt so that your leg begins to stick back into the mat. If you had somebody actually standing on your foot, or imagine somebody sitting on your foot, your left foot right now, you would feel the weight pressure of their body ending up on the back of your left glute because it would push down through the entire line of your leg. So I want you to recreate that right now with your right arm, the way that you pull. And this technique gives you a little bit more access into the hip joint capsule. And the hip joint capsule, most of our joints have a capsule around it, which is just another very brilliant protective measure for joints. And it's basically fibrocartilage tissue. So think of like thick tendon tissue that's made like an envelope. It envelops your entire joint. And that's what holds the synovial fluid that lubricates your joint in place. So it's essential to keep our joint capsules healthy by doing movement that aren't only serving the muscles themselves as what we usually think stretching in yoga is, but movements that actually serve the joints directly. Last breath out. Good. Bring your leg back to center, bend the knee, put the foot down, and let's do one more like this. So you're going to bring your right heel up on the belt. So similar but different. What we did on the previous one, you're going to hold both belts in the right hand. So right leg, right hand with the belt. Extend your left leg down. And then step 1, you can say step 0.5, before you take your leg anywhere, rotate your right leg on its axis so that your toes and your knee face to the right, as far as you can turn them to the right. Keep the knee engaged, keep the quadricep engaged, knee straight, and then slowly start to lower your leg to the right as long as you're continuously reinvesting your efforts in the attempt to rotate your toes and your kneecap towards the floor. So your leg won't need to get to the ground in order to receive the benefits of this posture. And again, what's most important is that you continuously try to rotate your right toes and knee to the ground while keeping the knee straight. How close it gets to the ground, the leg itself, that matters less. But the fact that you're doing those two movements and you're keeping track of the activity of your quadricep muscles, that's paramount. Because anytime that you start to, or anytime you don't notice that the activity of your quadricep muscles start to wane a little bit, that's when your hamstring muscles can take over. And if we're trying to stretch a muscle, like here, the hamstring being one of them, but then the muscle itself that we're trying to stretch engages due to just a lack of awareness or a lack of technique, then the muscle itself won't get stretched. And the only thing that will get stretched are what's at the end of muscles, right? And those are your tendons. And so a lot of times, injuries that people develop in yoga and muscle tears or tendon tears, especially like hamstring tendinopathy, that stuff really comes from an inefficient ability to know how to activate the body. And the body is the kind of thing that if you don't do things exactly and properly, there's a lot of room for error. And there's error that can happen even unbeknownst to us. Lift your leg back up. And then last side here, pass off your left heel. Pass off the belt from the right heel to the left. Extend your right leg down. So just like we did before, keep the knee straight. Rotate your toes and your knee as far as you can to the left. And once that's happened, then start to slowly lower the left leg towards the ground. You can slide your arm down the belt, or you can just lengthen the belt enough so that when your leg does get to its end, you can actually prop your elbow up on the floor. And that way you can work with a little bit better mechanics of your arm to help you pull your leg right back into the hip. So remember, no matter how close your leg is to the ground, and it really can be far if it needs to be, most importantly is that you're trying to rotate your toes and knee to face the mat, and you keep your quadricep muscles strong. And so holding this here, there's of course a lot of description that we have to go through, but let's come back again to the first thing that we seated in class, to our initial experience today of sitting and just referencing our internal experience, referencing how everything seems to come through and register somewhere in our experience, inside of our awareness. At what point do you notice your jaw and your throat you can get a little bit constricted? Or at one point do you notice that little inside voter who always wants to vote whether something is approvable or not approvable, disapprovable? And so without approving or disapproving, can you just receive the sensations, even if they're slightly intense, of this posture? Inhale, come back to center. Good. And then bend the knee. Now let's put the belt off to the side. Keep both knees bent. And you're going to start with the left foot. So you're going to heel and toe your left foot to the left. And once your foot has come to the left about 1.5 feet or 2, basically the length of your shin bone, stop your foot where it is, and then lower your knee towards the ground, which in this case is going to go medially or towards the right. Okay. Once your leg has kind of landed in that position, then place your right ankle on the left knee. And immediately as you do that, try not to use your right leg. So once you've put the foot there, leave the muscles of your legs alone, pretty much, and just let the weight of the right leg help encourage slow and gradual descending of the left leg. The only thing you might want to watch out for, if you feel any discomfort in your knees, especially the bottom left knee, you can lift your toes and spread the toes and notice how that registers in your knee. And if that still hasn't created the kind of balance you'd like, try to rotate the sole of your foot either straight up towards the ceiling or straight down towards the floor. And somewhere in between those extremes, if you slow that movement down, your knee is going to have the most optimal balance. So remember that foot position, and not just the foot position as you look at it and that's what it looks like and that's what I got to remember. But as you lay down, actually close your eyes Relax your mouth. Again, relax the jaw. And now reference how that foot position actually feels. So how would you know how to recreate that exact foot position next time if you weren't allowed to look at it and confirm? How would you confirm that from every other sensation that you have? And when it comes to body movement, when it comes to the awareness of where our limbs are in space, that's not an exteroceptive sense, meaning it's not a sense of seeing, smelling, touching, tasting. It's a sense of interoception. And more specifically, it's proprioception. So it works on a whole different landscape of our cognitive abilities to be able to perceive the body this way. And the awesome thing about good, wholesome proprioception, precise proprioception, you can say, is that it ultimately provokes your parasympathetic nervous system. So it provokes the state of enjoyment, wholesome enjoyment. It provokes the state of rest and healing, detoxing, whatever other of the various responses that a heightened parasympathetic nervous system gives us. To come out of the pose, take your right foot off the knee first, and instead of lifting your leg to get it back to center, just heel and toe your left foot until it comes back. And then let's go to the last side here, heel and toe your right foot out to the right. Once the foot has come about one shin's length away from the knee, lower your knee towards the floor, place your left ankle on the right knee, and then just turn off your leg muscles. As you did on the previous side, you can start to play around with the position of your left toes or even your right toes and foot so as to make the condition of your knees feel stable. In other words, when you're laying here, you shouldn't be concerned about your knees. Your mind shouldn't be immersed in apprehension of what's happening to your knees and what's going to happen in the next moment. So you relax your arms, you relax your body, more or less. And it's not an active pose, it's a passive pose because once you've placed your legs in this position, you want to start to generate progress through relaxation, not through action. Which means we kind of switched the game a little bit. Before, when we had the poses with the belt around the foot, there was a lot of activity there. We had to know how to turn on certain muscles, how to create certain kinds of movements, how to flare the toes properly. But here, unless you're involved in keeping your feet in a certain position, you want to just completely relax. And again, relaxation is a response that is the outcome of the parasympathetic nervous system. So when we actively practice relaxing in all the different techniques that create that feeling response, that becomes strengthened in itself in such a way that it bleeds into the rest of our life. So that we're not only good at relaxing when we're doing yoga for an hour, but we actually become more skilled at it, irrelevant of where we are and what the context is. And that's why this practice is so relevant and so applicable to anyone, because everybody has to live a life and everybody contends with different forces that stress us all out. In knowing how to have one leg up on your stressors is a very important survival skill. This is a skill that produces quality of life, or removes it for that matter. Okay, let's take the left foot off the knee. Great, heel and toe your right foot right back to center. All right, and then let's turn over to the side. And we'll come up. Move this blanket over here. Start on all fours. So getting on all fours, you want to make sure that your hands, your wrists are shoulder width apart, directly underneath the shoulders, same with the knees. Okay, and then keeping your elbows straight. You can even look at what I'm doing here for a moment. You're going to relax the muscles around your shoulders, which kind of feels like you're letting your heart melt down towards the floor. But then on the exhale, I want you to push away as if you're pulling your sternum, which you are, away from the ground. And going back and forth between these, so this would be inhale, this action would be exhale. Learning to do this helps you activate a very important shoulder stabilizing muscle called the serratus anterior muscle, which is also crucial for overhead movements. So let's try at least 5 of them. Okay, keep your elbows straight. Try not to just let your head only move. Keep your head steady. It's not going to be a big, gross movement. So as you inhale, let the muscles around your shoulder soften so your chest melts down. And exhale, push away. And when you push away on the exhale, imagine that you're pushing right here, the upper back, towards the ceiling, as close as you can. So again, inhale down. Exhale, push away. Close your eyes. Inhale. Exhale, push. Pull your chest back in. 2 more. Inhale down. Exhale, push away. And 1 more for fun. I think this is the 6th one. Inhale down. Exhale, push. Good. So from that position, what you were doing is protracting and retracting your shoulder blades. So this action of protracting your shoulder blades translates to better skill when you lift your arms overhead for downward dog. So before we do that, just sit right on the heels again. Sit on the knees, shins, interlace your fingers, turn your palms inside out, and start to push the tips of your index and middle fingers right into the backs of your hands. So if I face towards the camera, it should feel like your palms are being unraveled, like you're unraveling your own palms by pressing forward through the back of the hand with your fingers. Keep your legs nice and strong, and then slowly start to lift your arms up. So hold on, come back to the horizontal position. Push your arms forward, just like we did in that exhale movement where you're lifting your upper back towards the ceiling. And then use that pushing forward, that reaching forward action of your shoulders as you lift your arms up. And translate that protraction this way as if you're protracting by the time you're going all the way up. And so this helps to train what's called shoulder flexion, which is when you lift your arms up vertically. And part of what that includes is the elevation of your shoulders around the side of the neck, of course. And oftentimes what we get taught in yoga classes is to pull the shoulders down away from the ears, which actually starts to create a conflict between your humerus, your upper arm bone, and the acromion process of your shoulder blade. So to avoid that, you lift your shoulder blades up, which will help them rotate and keep every structure in its own proper, useful place. 1 more deep breath in. And then exhale, bring your arms down. And right from there, interlace your fingers behind your back. I like to call the shoulders the hips of the upper body, right? In the same way that doing nice deep hip opening poses, hip stretches of all sorts helps us actually feel better the way that we walk, how light we walk, how well we stand and so forth, how well we sit, of course. Doing movements, especially creating a little bit more well-rounded flexibility in the shoulders, helps us not just feel a little bit more lively in the chest and torso, it actually helps us feel more enlivened in the way that we breathe. So when you interlace your fingers back here for this pose, make sure that you're gripping the tips of your fingers very tightly against the backs of the hands. You actually want to almost see some white on the tips of your fingers from that much pressure. And don't worry, that much pressure is not bad. Sometimes I think we hear this rumor about yoga that it's meant to be a gentle, easy, loving practice, and some of that is true, I agree with. But it's almost as if it's portrayed to be the kind of practice where we don't want to exert, where we don't want to sweat, we don't want to have muscular intensity or metabolic intensity, which is completely at odds with how the body works, with how our biology has evolved to work. Good. Bring your arms out in front of you, or release your arms at least. So we're going to take what we just did in the previous posture, which is pushing your shoulders forward and then lifting your arms up. You're going to translate that into downward dog. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to go from here, from the quadruped position. We'll do 5 more of these. So again, you just have that experience right in your back pocket. So after the 5th one, you're going to stay in this position where you're protracting your shoulders, you're pulling your chest in, pushing your back, upper back towards the ceiling. You're going to take that feeling. So the feeling is generally, think of it this way. It's like you want to get your hands further from the chest. So think of that feeling. So you're going to take that feeling of pushing the hands further from the chest and the body, and then you're going to step your knees back, and you're going to slowly come into high plank. And then from high plank, as you're pushing your hands away from your body and away from your body, away from your hands, you're going to start to press yourself right back into your first full downward facing dog. And so by the time you get in it, you want to retain that feeling of pushing the floor as far as you can away from you and reaching your chest as far as you can away from the hands. So once you're there, close your eyes, lift your toes up, engage your legs. See if you can reconstitute your quadriceps to the same amount of action that they had when we were doing the hip postures with the belt just before, not too long ago. Take one more deep breath in, and then bring the knees down. Good. Step your right foot forward between the hands, and then come upright. So you start here with the hands on the hips. Keep your left knee more or less below the left hip, and your right ankle more or less right below the right knee. The lateral distance, if I turn this way, you should have your right leg in line with the right hip, left leg in line with the left hip. Try not to really ever set up your postures where everything is on one straight, narrow track. Okay, so with the hands on the hips, poking at the side of your left glute with your thumb, make sure your left glute is engaged. Lift the front toes. And then you're going to take an inhale and tilt yourself forward. And when I say tilt, see this position? It's going to be different than this position. So don't round yourself forward. It's not like you're reaching your head to the knee doing this. It's actually quite the contrary. You're reaching your head as far forward away from the knee as you can. So as you inhale, again, think about sticking your butt out to bring your belly and your chest down. And you can always move your right leg a little bit more out to the side so that you're not actually laying down on your leg. Stay here, take a deep breath in. And as you exhale, come up to vertical. So what we're going to do is just that in repetition, 5 times. So if you need to take a look at it, I'll show you the first couple. Inhale this way. Exhale up. Inhale forward. Exhale up. It might be a little bit counterintuitive as far as your breath goes, but it's good to kind of switch habits. It's good to move sometimes against our habitual intuitions. So keep your left glute strong, and then inhale, tilt forward. Exhale, use the left glute to help you come up. Inhale, keep the hands on the hips, elbows pull back. Exhale, lift. Now, if you really want to get challenged, close your eyes. Inhale forward. Study what your feet are doing. Exhale up. Inhale forward. 2 more. Elbows back. Exhale up. Relax your jaw. Last one on your own. And as you do this, find your way back to your meditating self that you had in the beginning of a practice. And once you're upright, hands come down to the floor. Right leg back, left leg forward as we switch. Left knee above the left ankle, right knee more or less below the right hip. Keep your right glute strong. Okay. So where you know where this is going, you're going to inhale, tilt forward, move your left leg to the left so that you're not laying down on it. Exhale, come up. As you do this the whole time, keep pulling your elbows back. Their elbows are going to really want to separate when you bend forward. Exhale, up. 3 more. Inhale. Exhale, use the right glute to help you come up. Inhale. Chest forward, even eyes forward. Exhale up. And let's do one more with the eyes closed. Inhale. Exhale. Perfect. And then hands down, left leg back. So again, starting from all fours, come back to reviewing that protraction retraction action of the shoulders, the action of retraction. So you're going to inhale, let your chest slump down. Exhale, push away. Inhale down. Exhale, push. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. And one more time with the eyes closed. Inhale, let your chest melt towards the floor. Exhale, push your chest as far away from your hands as you can. And now carry that pushing away protraction feeling into your high plank. And then as you start to now press back to downward dog, keep thinking of chest and hands as far away from each other as possible. As far as possibly possible. Good. And once you're in your downward dog, relax your neck. Let your head hang. Engage your quadriceps. 3 more breaths. So our central objective right now is to see how far from our hands we can distance our chest and shoulders. Good. Next inhale. Step your right foot forward. Keep your back knee lifted. So you start with this supported high lunge first. Keep your back knee strong. Make sure you get a long enough stance so that your front thigh is parallel to the ground and your left heel is vertical. And then you come up, hands on the hips, and we're going to have a repeat of what we did in the low lunge before. So you're going to inhale, tilt forward, exhale, come up. Let's try. So inhale, look forward, chest forward, exhale, come up. If you set your gaze on something very steady and immobile in front of you, it'll actually let you focus a little bit better on all of the feelings of the moving parts. Inhale. Exhale. 2 more. Last one. Inhale, tilt forward. Exhale, up. Good. Now from this upright position, see if you can lower your back knee to the mat slowly. Left hand goes on the ground to the inside of your front foot, and then right arm up. So just a nice, easy twist like this. And as I've gone over it in the previous weeks and classes, I'll just do it real quickly while you stay in your twist. So if you need to take a look, if you haven't seen this, I'm showing this to you from the back because I want you to understand how your visual gaze can influence where your body is in space. So when you're in a twist like this, you want to be able to look back behind you. You know, it doesn't have to be in line with where your head is. It could be a little bit more above. You want to make sure that your eyes are landing on the same plane where your spine is, because that's going to ensure that your head isn't going too far forward or too far backwards, which is going to start to create different movements in the rest of the spine. And we want to just be able to isolate a twist. And in order for that twist not to be contaminated by other movements, you're always placing your gaze, your visual attention, with the plane of your spine. Okay, and then inhale, bring your right arm down, bring your right leg back, step your left leg forward, lift your back knee up. And again, get a long enough stance so that your front thigh is as close to horizontal as you can get it, your back foot is as close to vertical as you can manage, and then slowly come up. Okay, so both hands on your hips, pull your elbows back. So here we go. As you inhale, look forward, tilt forward. Exhale, slowly come up. Use your right glute to help you lift. Inhale forward, elbows go towards each other. Exhale up. Inhale forward. Exhale, lift. Inhale. And exhale. And once you're lifted this last time, slowly lower your back knee. And then right hand goes down to the floor inside of your front foot. Left arm goes up. And there's your twist. And by the way, if you don't want to keep your left arm up, you can always place your hand on your front thigh. But turning your head now over your left shoulder, wherever your eyes are landing behind you, even if you can't turn your head that far, you can still turn your eyes. And then you want to make sure again that when you look back, whatever it is that your eyes land on back there will notify to you whether your head is in line with the spine, the plane of the spine, or not. Keep the front toes lifted. If you want, you can lift your back knee up. 2 more breaths. Good. And then you're going to inhale, untwist, hands down, step your left leg back. Now let's see if we can go right from that quadruped position where you're protracting, lifting your chest away from the ground, pulling your spine towards the ceiling. Go right into high plank. Close your eyes in high plank. And then now start to translate all of those actions into your downward dog just for 5 breaths, so that you now take in the felt experience of what it's like to keep driving your chest further and further from the hands. Last breath there. Good. And now step your right foot forward between the hands. Keep the back knee lifted for now, hands on the floor. Look at your back foot, pivot the back heel to the ground so that your back toes are now facing out at about 9 o'clock. And then either have your right hand on the floor or grab your shin, and you're going to start to straighten your right leg, setting up triangle pose. Now, once your right knee is straight, lift your front toes up. So there's 2 options. You can have your hand on a block or on the floor. You just want to make sure that your right hand is on the outside of your right leg, not in here. Otherwise, just place your hand on the shin. In any case, you want to be able to actually lean onto that support. So you lean into your right arm, and when you lean onto your right arm, try this. Place your left hand on your left waist. So not on the pelvis, not the hip, not where there's bone and structure. So you can kind of keep doing this. You can keep squeezing. And there's a certain point where the squeezing, where you feel no structure. It feels like nice, soft muscle, soft tissue. So find that place and then squeeze it while resting on your right arm. So actually lean your body weight into the right arm that's on the block or on the shin and squeeze that left side of the waist. Now, as you keep squeezing it, just keep the squeeze consistent. Take your right hand off of your leg or the block and notice how the muscles have activated underneath that squeeze of your left fingers. So what that shows you is those muscles can relax once you support the weight of your body on your right arm. And when they can relax, what you can do is you can get a lot more twisting to happen just by pushing down with your right arm and turning your head, and then eventually even lifting your left arm. Because a triangle pose does have a pretty good element of twist within it. When you get that final touch on your triangle, close your eyes. We just need about 3 more breaths. Good. And then inhale, bring your left hand down, right knee down, and then switch sides. So I'll turn around this way. So we got your left leg forward, right knee goes up. Keep your hands on the mat. Slowly lower the right heel to the floor. And then either having the hand on the outside of your foot or grabbing your shin, go ahead, straighten your front leg. Right? And there doesn't need to be any shame in the fact that it's easier or it's a little bit better to rest your hand on something than the floor. Because yoga, we shouldn't confuse with just the practice of stretching. So lack of flexibility in yoga doesn't actually mean that you're not good at yoga. The only thing that yoga really trains in us is the ability to be precise in our actions, not to be flexible. Lift your front toes up. Now, if this stance is too long for you and it feels kind of awkward in your ankle to keep the front of your foot planted, you can always lift the front of the foot off the ground, or you could just simply shorten your stance a little bit. But as you lift your right arm up, turn your head to look at your right hand, and you want to be able to eventually turn your head so well that right now, if you closed your right eye, you could see your your right hand with the left eye. Right? And that's going to be kind of a little quick rule of thumb test of your neck flexibility. Inhale, bring your right hand down, bend the left knee. And now let's come back into a lunge. We'll do a little bit of work on the quadriceps, and then we'll rest. So right leg forward, left knee down. Make sure that your left hand stays, fairly distant from the front foot. You're going to place your right hand on your right thigh and actually let yourself go back into the twist. And so right now, as we're twisting in this way, you're allowing your right shoulder to twist. So that means your right shoulder is getting closer to the left side of your body, right? So then once it's gotten there, bend your back knee, lift the foot, and grab your foot from the outside. Make sure that as you try to grab your foot, you're not unraveling your whole twist that you've just set up. Keep your chest exposed, keep your head rotating, and then lift the foot and grab. And if that doesn't work, you can always create a little bit of a lasso with your strap and hold your foot that way. And initially, we're just pulling the heel here towards your butt. And we're all going to be limited how close we can get the heel to the butt. So when it's gotten to its, extreme version of its closest proximity, pull your butt up towards the heel a little bit and try to meet it halfway. Good. Once you've gotten your heel and your butt to touch, then try to let your hips start to swing right back down towards the floor. Good. Let your whole left thigh, your entire left hip, sway down towards the mat. Okay. And then slowly release. Left leg back, left leg forward, our last side. Starting with the twist again, left hand on the left thigh, turn your head over your left shoulder, look back behind you. Okay. So then from there, as you remember where we're going, the ability to keep your back thigh closer to the ground, that's going to improve over time. That's actually going to assist you in where we're going with this next part. So when you bend your back knee and you start to lift the foot, you'll already notice that your thigh starts to lift off the ground, right? For good reason. So when you grab your foot, start to pull the heel towards the butt. So it's right heel to right butt. When that kind of reaches its limit, then you let your butt lift a little bit higher to meet the heel halfway. Even if you don't get contact, just seeing exactly how close you can get the two together. Then you start to bring them both right back towards the mat. And you want to make sure that your right arm is still useful there in the way that it helps you continue twisting. So try to keep looking back behind you while you're pulling your right foot in. Last breath there. And then inhale, release. Very nice. And now let's just lay down on the belly. We'll do one back bend before we finish. So after a little bit of effort there on the quadriceps and a little bit more length and extension, you're going to place your hands in line with the shoulders, a little bit more laterally from the shoulders. They don't have to be right underneath. Point your toes back, press your toenails into the mat, engage your glutes, press your pubic bone into the mat, and the whole time, just watch those 2 points. Just keep feeling into those 2 points. The pressure of your toenails and the pressure of your pubic bone into the ground. Start to use your arms while watching those 2 points. Use your arms to try to pull yourself forward off the mat. When you feel that action come online, start to gently press yourself off the ground as long as you're constantly trying to pull your chest forward anyways. And no matter how high you come up, if your arms never get straight, the most important thing is that you're creating space in the spine. And space we get in the spine in a pose like this by continuously pulling the chest forward, right? So imagine you're actually sliding your body forward off the mat. And that propulsion creates length. And length is another way to say space. When you have space between your spinal joints and vertebra, that's when your spine works best. And that's when it can heal. One more deep breath in, keep your glutes strong. And as you exhale, come down with the same peel. So you're feeling, feel the peel. And as you come down, I would always encourage bringing your hands or arms underneath your head and then resting your forehead on them. Let your heels drop out. Make sure that your toes and knees turn in towards each other. And just let yourself be supported. No action anymore. Notice the aftermath from the previous posture. So you can now go into your resting pose. You have two options. You can stay in a downward facing shavasana, just like you have here. You can put a blanket or towel underneath your forehead. You can either keep your arms up above the hips, more around the shoulders. You can even keep the hands underneath the head still. Or you can bring your arms back behind you or to the sides if that feels comfortable. And if you don't want to do the downward facing shavasana, just turn over on your back. Put a blanket under your head and rest that way. Make sure that you do have a little bit of an elevation for your head if you're going to lay on your back. Use something like a belt, or if you have a little towel, that's even better, to put over your eyes so that you start to cut off the imposition of light on the system, because it does impose itself on your system. And if we're practicing yoga in the middle of the day and we want to rest, we use certain neurological hacks like this to get that rest response developed a little quicker. One thing to note, if you're laying on your abdomen, make sure that you keep your toes and knees turned in. Downward facing Shavasana is actually a pretty good lower back therapeutic, meaning it's a yoga therapy technique for lower back pain, lower back treatments. But if you're laying on your back and straightening your legs feels a little bit awkward on your back, you can just bend the knees and let your thighs lean against each other with your feet flat on the floor. You can find the perfect distance between your feet, between the feet from each other, and then also between your body and your feet, so that the leaning of one leg into the other is completely effortless. Think about it as setting yourself up so that you can actually drop the body. You can forget about micromanaging your legs and arms. And this is our Shavasana. So thank you for joining me today. Make sure that you give yourself enough time to rest. If you have plenty of time, I usually encourage about 10 minutes of Shavasana. And then when you're finished with it, make sure that you never do a sit-up out of Shavasana. You always roll over to the side, then come up. After any kind of yoga, hydration is imperative. Keep that in mind. And thank you for joining me today. I will see you very soon.